war hosts clashed their claws in amusement, though the high scholars of Vera declared it an echo anomaly. Still the patrol fleets were dispatched, their cruisers cutting through the void with arrogance painted across their hulls, confident they would find nothing more than a drifting derelict or a pirate trick. For myths do not breathe, and legends do not sail the stars. Yet as the flotilla closed on the dark sector where the signal pulsed like a heartbeat, the void itself seemed to grow heavier. The starlight dimmed as though something vast and ancient pressed against it, and the laughter in the command decks began to falter into silence, until one by one, the ships reported the same impossible thing. A silhouette hanging against the abyss, larger than any cruiser, darker than shadow, a hull that seemed not built but wrought, brutal in geometry, scarred yet proud. And then without warning space shimmered, distortion waves tearing across the void as an immense shape uncloaked, a leviathan of metal and wrath emerging from invisibility. And in that instant every alien throat dried, every heart struck by a primal fear their species had not felt in millennia. For emblazoned across the Dreadnought's flanks was a symbol no archive contained but every instinct recognized, the mark of humanity, a flag of defiance painted in stark colors, and the comm channels exploded with disbelief, voices stammering that it was impossible, that humans were dead, that humans were never real. Yet the proof loomed before them, a warship of such monstrous scale that their fleet seemed like insects beside it, its armor layered thick like geological strata, its weapons arrays humming with dormant power, its engines glowing with the fury of a captive star. And when its forward batteries lit for the first time in 10,000 years, the universe itself seemed to shudder, the beam slicing through the lead cruiser of the Dominion as if peeling away a shell, vaporizing it into incandescent gas. Silence falling across the channels so complete it was like death itself had laid its hand upon them. And in that silence the Dreadnought spoke, not with words of diplomacy, nor with pleas of kinship, but with a transmission carried on every frequency at once, a voice deep and resonant that did not ask permission to be heard. It simply declared, "We were forgotten, we were mocked, we are returned." And the fleets that had once mocked the myth now broke into chaos, their formations collapsing as ships scrambled to retreat, their admirals torn between fighting the impossible and fleeing from it. But the Dreadnought moved with the calm inevitability of a predator among prey, every maneuver precise, every shot a lesson in annihilation, its shielding technology bending their weapons into nothingness, its hull shrugging off impacts that would have shattered battle moons, and behind it, like phantoms rising from old graves, came more, smaller signatures, corvettes, destroyers, carriers, an entire task force sliding out of cloak one by one, each bearing the same emblem, each radiating the same aura of ruthless confidence. And the galaxy watched in horror as the humans, long dismissed as myth, revealed themselves not as scattered survivors, but as an organized, disciplined, and terrifyingly prepared power, their doctrine not rooted in arrogance but in memory. Forged in the crucible of extinction they had once faced alone, and every alien who witnessed it understood in their marrow why the legend had lingered, why the old doctrine still carried warnings of asymmetric war, for here was the living truth. Humans fought not for conquest nor for glory, but because survival was written into their blood, and when they rose like storms that could not be reasoned with, like fires that could not be contained. And as the Dreadnought loomed amidst the wreckage of the Dominion fleet, silent now save for the fatting screams of vaporized crews, the message spread faster than any courier ship could carry, faster than any council could suppress, carried on whispers, on fear, on awe. The humans are back. The humans were never gone. The humans have ships that hide in the dark and strike with thunder. The humans do not forget. And as the empires of the galaxy reeled, their laughter turned to trembling, their jokes to prayers, their arrogance to dread. For a myth had stepped out of the shadows and written itself across the stars in fire, and in the long corridors of power where senators and warlords gathered, no one dared to speak above a whisper, no one dared to laugh again. For all knew that the balance of the galaxy had shifted, that every strategy, every war plan, every doctrine must now be rewritten. And in the silence left by the Dreadnought's departure, a single truth echoed in every mind, chilling, undeniable, eternal: myths are real. And the name of humanity would never again be spoken as a joke, but as a warning. In the marble-lit halls of the Zorinthian High Conclave, laughter rippled like the echo of breaking glass, for the agenda had descended into farce. A delegate from the distant Lyre cluster had dared to invoke the old joke, the oldest ghost in galactic lore, that somewhere, lost in the abyss, there had once existed a species called humans, a predator race so cunning that entire empires supposedly trembled at their name. But the chamber drowned it in ridicule, senators pounding their claws, their frills, their plated limbs against the tables in amusement. Scholars smirking that the myth of humans was nothing more than a fireside tale designed to frighten cadets into discipline. A cultural joke passed from one academy to another, and so the legend lingered not as history but as mockery, as the eternal punchline in every mess hall, war council, and exploration guild. For what species of flesh and bone could ever hunt the hunters? What kind of fragile mammal could conquer stars? And why had no trace, no wreck, no ruins ever been uncovered across the surveyed sectors? Yet it was from the very arrogance of that dismissal that the first tremor of dread was born, when the signals came, faint, ghost-like, slipping through the edges of the Oran expanse like a whisper clawing across deep space. A signal so clean and structured that the technopriests swore it could not be natural, and yet its code was untranslatable, its geometry precise, pulsing with an intelligence older than any encryption known. Fleets were dispatched with arrogance, the Ashkal hunters riding their war beasts of steel, the Threx dominions sending their swiftest interceptors, and the laughing chorus of the conclave followed them, eager to see the ghost proven false once more, eager for another story to mock in their drinking halls, until the first fleet reported that their sensors were being shadowed by nothing, as if their own signatures were reflected back against them. Until crews whispered of a darkness sliding just beyond their visual range, a mass vast enough to occlude stars, yet invisible to every scan. And then, in the cold silence that followed, the transmissions cut short not with screams but with a sound no one could define. A single, resonant chime, like a funeral bell struck across the void, reverberating through every frequency before dissolving into black silence. The conclave grew uneasy. Doubt seeped into the cracks of their pride, archivists digging desperately into myth records, unearthing forbidden fragments. Humans described not as conquerors but as phantoms, as predators who mastered concealment so perfectly they could stalk empires without ever being seen, their ships rumored to carry cloaks of shadow, their fleets moving as if the laws of detection themselves bent around them. And the laughter in the Senate chambers grew brittle, thin, desperate, as another fleet was dispatched, then another. And each time, only silence returned, until the stars themselves seemed to mock the arrogance of those who had believed so firmly in myth. It was on the 13th day that the Oran expanse itself trembled, as if a sheet of glass had cracked across the cosmos, and every listening post recorded the impossible. A void where none had been, a distortion that grew not smaller but larger, pulling itself out of the black until the veil fell away, and there it was, drifting into view with the patience of inevitability. A dreadnought vast beyond imagination, a leviathan of metal and silence, its hull not carved in ornate sigils like the Threx, nor plated in gleaming bone like the Ashkal, but cold, smooth, and dark, with no banners, no warnings, only the silent authority of its existence. And for the first time in centuries, the conclave fell silent, their tongues frozen, their laughter dead, as every instinct screamed what their minds refused to accept. That this shape, this predator born of steel, belonged not to fiction, not to myth, but to humans. Humans who had been whispered into ridicule, humans who had not died, had not vanished, but had simply been watching, waiting, hidden beneath their cloaks of silence until the galaxy itself forgot them. The Dreadnought did not signal, did not broadcast threats, did not even fire. Its presence was enough. Its decloaking a revelation that struck deeper than any weapon. For in that moment every race realized that the myth was true, that their jokes had teeth, that they were children mocking shadows while something older and infinitely sharper had been waiting in the dark. And then, like a beast stirring after eons of stillness, the human vessel moved, not hurriedly, not aggressively, but with the calm precision of an apex predator who no longer needed to prove its dominance, its hull shimmering as hundreds of smaller signatures blossomed around it, escort craft uncoiling like the spawn of a leviathan, each one bearing the same mark. A silence that smothered sensors, a design that reflected no culture, no empire, only the cold hand of humanity. Across the sectors, warlords panicked, fleets scrambled, conclaves shouted in fear, yet none dared fire the first shot, for even the boldest predator knows when it stands before something greater. And the galaxy, which once mocked humans as fiction, now stared in awe, terror, and reverence as their myth breathed into reality. Reports spread like wildfire across the trade lanes, whispers turning to screams, laughter curdling into silence. The humans had returned not as ghosts, not as ruins, but as a force of living steel, their dreadnought a monument to patience and power. And in its wake every world, every council, every academy was forced to rewrite its memory, to admit that the oldest myth was no joke, that the hunters had returned to their hunting grounds. And in the final chamber of the conclave, where arrogance had once laughed the loudest, a new silence reigned, broken only by the words of the oldest archivist, spoken with trembling certainty, a truth that would echo through generations. The myths walk again. The galaxy is no longer ours. It never was.